Hi, everyone. This is Mark Plunkett, the pastor of Heritage Presbyterian Church, and this is another of our weekly devotionals. Have you ever heard the expression, $1,000,000 talent, 10-cent head? Ever heard that one before? $1,000,000 talent, 10-cent head means that you have an athlete or an artist or a musician or an actor or even a politician, and they have everything going for them. Everything going for them. All kinds of talent. You just can't believe the amount of talent and ideas that they have. But then their 10-cent head gets in the way. They start doing things they shouldn't do. They go down a path they shouldn't go. And after a while, things are just a disaster. That's what I mean when I say $1,000,000 talent, 10-cent head. Now, if you think about that for a second, you can probably name all kinds of sports people that flamed out in whatever their sport was after they started, or musicians that had a hit and then never had another one, actors and actresses that started out great and now you never hear from them anymore, that kind of stuff. That's what I'm talking about. Well, believe it or not, this also happened in the Old Testament, and I'm referring to King Saul. Now, Saul was the king before David, and I want you to listen to what was going on. First of all, the people went to Samuel, who was God's prophet, and they whined. They said, "We want a king. We want a king so we can be like all the other countries." And Samuel told them, "Don't do this. You should be trusting in the Lord. You should not do this. Don't do this." And the people still said, "We want a king. We want a king." So Samuel did a smart thing. He inquired of the Lord, "What should I do?" And the Lord said, "Give them a king. I will show you the person to give them." So Samuel did what the Lord told him. And he found this man. Listen to the description of Saul. A handsome young man. There was not a man among the people of Israel more handsome than Saul. He stood head and shoulders above everybody else. So he looked the part. Okay? He looked the part. Then later on, when he was installed as the king, when Samuel anointed him, right? Samuel said, "The Lord has anointed you ruler over his people Israel. You are to reign over the people of the Lord, and you will save them from the hand of their enemies all around." Okay, now that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Saul was in charge of the country. He was also a warrior, and he was a great warrior. He was a wonderful warrior. And so not only did he rule the country, but he led the army to defeat all the enemies of Israel. Sounds pretty good so far, doesn't it? Remember the part about 10-cent head? See, when David came along, David recognized that Saul was king, and he gave Saul all the credit that Saul was due. He gave him honor. David never, ever, 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 ever tried to get in the way of Saul, never tried to knock him out from being king. But at one point, the people had a chant going that really ate at Saul. All right, what they said was, "Saul has killed his thousands, and David his 10,000s," meaning enemies. Saul had killed thousands of enemies. David had killed 10,000s of enemies. Well, Saul really didn't like that. It was true. David had slaughtered more enemies than Saul had, but Saul was the king. He was supposed to get all the glory. And so he started to go a little bit crazy. And he got so crazy that at one point he took his spear and he threw it at David, but David managed to duck and get out of the way. Other times, Saul became violent in different ways, and it got to the point where David had to play a harp to calm Saul down. 10-cent head, remember? 10-cent head. So finally what happened was Saul got so crazy and so many things began going wrong, and he quit asking Samuel for help, and he quit inquiring of the Lord. When he'd been doing that, things were going fine, but now he was just as bad as any other terrible leader. And so finally in the end, Saul had to fall on his own sword in battle. And he was found and he was dead. And then David was anointed king. And David served for 40 years. And no matter what anything says in the Bible, God loved David. But Saul blew it. And there's a good lesson there. We're all given talent. We're all given ability to do something well. But if we don't work with the Lord, if we don't use our talent for the good things that we're supposed to be doing, if we don't at least pray for guidance, then we are nothing more than $1,000,000 talent with a 10-cent head. Think about it, Christians. Amen.